Hi, everybody. Welcome to the final week of the fire chakra. And what I was thinking we would do is I would do a quick tour through the entire month, revisiting some of the themes, what we've been through, just as a refresher so that you can take it all in. So the fourth week for every month will be the synthesis week where we bring together all of the threads and create this tapestry of which we look at what we've done, we reflect, we introspect, and we kind of figure out how far we've come with that particular chakra. So if we look at the first week, what were our themes? Energy, confidence, transformation. These are the overarching themes of fire, and hopefully you've experienced some transformation this month. Maybe some slight or some whopping boosts of confidence, and really paid attention to your energy level. So where is your energy? What does it look like when you are full of energy? So we started our week one with this quote, which I like so much, from Anna Freud. I was always looking outside myself for strength and confidence, but it comes from within. It is there all the time. We always have that sense of fire with us, as we see from Manami's painting of all of the different elements that comprise the fire system, whether it's the butterfly of transformation, the scales of work-life balance, the flames of digestion, the triangle pointing upward, just like fire goes up and out, the clouds of mental thought, the yellow foods at the bottom with grains. And so just kind of coming to a refresher on all those things that compose the fire system of health, which is quite vast. We've been through a lot of terrain over this past month, and it's a whole mixture of different things, right? So again, looking at this wheel of the fire and sensing for yourself what feels relevant at this time. You kind of did that early on in the first week. Now, when you look at this, look at the wheel, spend about 2 or 3 seconds just perusing the wheel, and stop wherever it looks interesting. Even stop this recording if you need to. So the fire system of health, we've explored even the physiology and the anatomy of it, which is truly the middle of the digestive tract. So the colon belonging to the flow, the looking at the upper part of the digestive tract belonging to the truth, and then we've got the middle, which is the hubbub of most of the fire that's burning. And so having a catalyst, having things that help us to burn bright. And so we explored a lot of those dynamics with food, with our bodies. We spent a whole week really focused on the organs of that middle digestive tract. And again, I want you to leave the fire with a sense that there is joy, brightness, empowerment, that there's an energy to each of the chakras that really spans the continuum, the spectrum. And so that comes into the physical manifestation. I also like to chunk out each of the chakras into decades of our life. And with the fire, what I have pegged this as is essentially the 20s, the decade of the 20s, when we are out of we have emerged from the corral of the home that we were raised in. We've been through all of our schooling, more or less, and now we emerge into the professional world. And what are we doing in the professional world? Are we continuing with schooling? Are we creating a family? Do we have ambition and drive to be working downtown, going on a bus to work? What is the feel and the flavor? How are we creating who we are in the physical reality through our gifts, through who we are at that ego center self? So of course, yellow, you've been seeing lots of yellow this month. Has your opinion towards yellow changed? How do you feel about yellow? I remember Tracy saying in one of the webinars that she had a lot of yellow at home. And so for yourself, how much yellow do you have? Are you wearing yellow clothing? Are you eating lots of yellow foods? Do you drive a yellow car? Are the walls in your home painted yellow? How are you warming up to yellow? Are you warming up to yellow? And maybe to focus on that. And then also looking at the whole detox quiz. If you feel so inclined, it might be a good idea to retake that quiz to see where you fall on this spectrum. And if you did it at the beginning of the month, even better to do it now at the end to find out, are you overactive, are you underactive, or are you in that Goldilocks of just right? Where are you? And so oftentimes I like to just look at the individual's scores rather than comparing them to other people. So just see where you are in that continuum. Where have you slid throughout this month? Have you gone up a notch, down a notch? Maybe you've stayed right where you are at right now. So the beauty of the fire, one of the many beauties of the fire, because the fire is truly beautiful. It's illuminating. And the thing about fire is that it just takes a small spark to drive momentum and action, which is why when I wrote this quote, the energy of one small act carries within it a spectrum of possibilities. We can think about this with the flow, where there's a ripple effect of dropping a coin or a pebble into water. And similarly with the fire, we can have a match of inspiration, a little burst, a little spark. And then before we know it, it takes hold and it has spread. It has spread and it has created this wildfire of activity. And in some cases, that might be a good thing. In other cases, it may not be a good thing. So we have to be our own assessor of that. So within week one, we talked about energy and exchange. Exchange is a big one here. Exchange in the physical world, bringing that back into the mental world. Catalyst and spark, all things light, and primarily nature-driven light, not electricity as you see here with the bulb per se, but things like the sun, things that are burning bright, like a bonfire. Again, a candle that has a small flickering flame. A stovetop with the blue flame of the gasoline that is coming through in order to enable us to cook. So, but this can also be perceived as something that's mentally catalyzing and sparking. So again, the double meanings, especially of fire, that everything that we talk about with respect to the body applies to our life. The idea of perfection and timing, time, one of the reasons why we get so stressed sometimes is because we're time bound, or we have certain frameworks of how things should be. And so within the fire, exploring our relationship to time, our relationship to perfection, to see how we might let go of that belt a little bit, let go of the grip that we hold, or maybe we actually need a little bit more structure and timing in our lives to get things done. We can wield both ends of this spectrum, just like we can for all the other chakras. Accomplishment and achievement, actually getting things done on your to-do list, feeling that movement, feeling like you're getting things done. So, and with all of that, whenever we're talking about doing, oftentimes it propagates stress. And so one of the things I hope that you're taking away from not just the fire, but also the root, is that it's not about stress as an entity, because stress is always going to exist. And in fact, when stress was birthed in 1936 by Hans Selye, it was never meant to be a negative word. And it's all about our relationship to it. It's our reaction to it. And so how do we empower our inner strength, our inner fire, in order to manage that stress, right? That we're in charge of that. Confidence and self-esteem came up a number of times as we've gone through this. And as Dr. Carolyn Mace would say, the sacred truth of the fire chakra is all about honoring oneself. With the root, we honor the tribe. With the flow, we honor relationship with another or partnership. With the fire, we honor ourself. And to allow, and I think in our society, we have taken self-esteem and created selfishness out of it by imprinting it with a negative connotation. And maybe we need a little bit more of coming home to who we are in our authentic, brilliant, radiant sense, and kind of burning out a lot of the negativity of whatever selfishness means. And perhaps all of us have different connections into that word. Power and empowerment, just like this woman is showing in the field, arms are reaching out, the torso is open and stretched, and we feel open and alive like the sunflowers in a field. And so really feeling that sense of aliveness, really feeling the sense of can do, feels good. I feel alive in the world. And again, this is a very external chakra. They all are to some extent. The warming color is a bit more so. And this one is a blaze into the physical presence, into the physical reality. And so here's where manifestation takes place. How do we get to manifestation? We need empowerment. We need to actually feel that. And so thinking for yourself, well, what does empowerment look like? Just like I was asking Shelley when she said that her digestion was robust, I asked her to describe that in the webinar because we need to know when we've arrived. How do we know if we have arrived at confidence, at empowerment, at good digestion? We need to have a benchmark of what that looks like for us. So I have a picture of this woman here who I feel, just looking at her eyes, her gaze, her whole persona just, to me, radiates confidence. And you have to figure out for yourself, what is confidence? We had a little bit of a discussion about that on one of the Facebook threads. Ego and presence. And sometimes that can get a little bit frenetic, but presence doesn't always have to be loud, boisterous, and visible. It can be invisible. It can be very impactful through the sense, again, of stepping into a room, not saying anything, but really creating, again, this fire supercharge. And sometimes you can feel that when somebody steps into a room, you feel that they've come into that space and they haven't even said a word. Transformation and transfer. This is what we're doing every time we eat and every time we don't eat. We are constantly, continually transforming ourselves. And through the course of this experience together, which will be 8 months total, you're going to be a different person. You're going to be a different person at the end of every week, at the end of every day, at the end of every month, and at the end of our 8 months. And so there is a continuous burning and purging and a letting go-ness that is happening by way of doing this deep personal work. So to reflect on this, what does this look like for you at this point, 3 months into the program? Maybe to jot some notes down in your journal about what's happening to your body. Where do you feel certain changes happening in the mental, emotional space? How are you beginning to see the deeper meaning of things that happen for you in your life? And of course, the obvious, heat and fire. For many of us, this was summertime, and summertime brings with it all kinds of raging heat and air conditioning. And so some of us were immersed in heat while we went through this experience. And we can also cultivate the sense of heat and fire simply by lighting a candle, taking a hot shower, going into a sauna. There are a variety of different ways that we can cultivate and bring in that sense of heat and fire. And some of you, astrologically, may be a little bit more connected to fire because of maybe the persona of the signs that you wear, or even in Ayurvedic medicine. We talked about Pitta. Pitta is the metabolic dosha, the constitution that all of us hold. It's just that some of us hold it more than others. So we might tend towards being more fiery as a person, and constitutionally, physiologically. We might be more prone to digestive issues. Radiance and brilliance, what a nice way to think about the fire. I'm thinking of joy, pleasure, just really embracing life in an empowered sense. And then we moved from the first week into the second week, where we got into the body, we got into physiology, we talked about acidification, blood sugar balance, digestion, we got into the different organs, as I mentioned, where we actually visited a number of these different organs, and we talked about assimilation of the process of digestion. Where do we get stuck? Where is there stagnation and stuckness? And how does that parallel our individual lives? And so I want you to continue to bask in that glow of understanding digestion of food, digestion of life. and seeing what shows up for you as we move through this experience together. So we moved from the body into food, which is a logical progression, of course. And in week 3, we talked about all things carbohydrates. So the root, protein and minerals, things that are stabilizing and building and grounding. The flow, fats and oils, things that are flowing and fluid and keep us hydrated. And then the third week we had of the fire, so the third month and the third week, we now had carbohydrates to talk about. And for some people, you might even want to do a quick laddering on the word carbohydrate. What does carbohydrate mean for you? All of the negative and positive connotations of carbohydrate, of sweeteners, everything that we bring to the plate in at every meal, every day, multiple times per day. Looking at the yellow foods that we may surround ourselves with, whether they're health promoting or health depleting. The yellow code, the signature of foods within this color framework is all about digestion. So acidification, digestion, prebiotics, fibers, food mood balance through the gut. And so lots of different options here as we discussed. Not only do we talk about carbohydrates as a whole, and then we distilled into sweeteners, we also got into a variety of different foods like whole grains, legumes, fibers, whether they come from food sources or from dietary supplement sources. So again, thinking, what was interesting is listening to many of you in our 6th webinar. It was amazing to hear how many of you were experiencing digestive issues as we moved into the fire. So Gloria had mentioned that, a couple of you were commenting on how you were completely fine. I think Rebecca had also mentioned it, completely fine. And then we move into fire and there are some changes in the digestive system. We start paying attention to the foods that we are bringing in, talking about pineapple, talking about parsley and lutein. And so the energetics, I think that, again, this is one of the aspects of foods that is often overlooked, right? We tend to look at calories, nutrients, the physical matter, and not so much the energy, the energetics. So the energetics of carbohydrates, they're burning, they're bright, they give us energy, they give us quick bursts of energy, they give us sustained energy. They are the ultimate fuel source in many ways, and they create heat. They create heat. And many times through the act of digestion, we feel that heat. We might actually have a flushing reaction. The ears might get red, the nose might get red, the cheeks might get hot. And so the act of metabolism is one of burning bright. And that in part is catalyzed through carbohydrates. So sweeteners in all the many different forms, talked about glycemic index, the spike of blood sugar coming up and then coming down, how we want that to be like rolling hills so that we have evenness and balance in our energy and we don't tax our insulin reserves, tax our poor yin pancreas, which is soft and nurturing and squirting out lots of different enzymatic juices in order to help us to break down. And she gets kind of tired if we continue to feed her these high glycemic index foods, which will require more of her fire. So it's about finding that balance, striking that balance, and knowing what that feels like. Fibers are one way to help strike the balance if we are having things that are higher glycemic. And it's truly amazing to look at all the different functions of fiber. They are vast. They are vast, and many people get way too little in the way of fiber. And so looking at your fiber content, there are so many different apps now where you can assess your food intake. You can be looking up certain foods. You can go on worldshealthiestfoods.com. You can go on the USDA nutrient database to look up foods. And as I mentioned, typically per serving of a food, it'd be nice if you can get about 5 grams per serving. Ideally, we want about 28 to 35 grams of fiber. Much of that depends on the caloric intake. Yellow food. all the beautiful yellow foods, the color code of yellow being digestion. We think of bananas and plantains and pineapple, all these goodies. And some of the green foods are considered yellow foods because they've got yellow under the surface. And then the final week, the synthesis. Here we are. I just did a quick tour of the preceding 3 weeks. And so I'd like you to spend some time, and you're going to have an additional week after the synthesis week to bring together the strands of root, flow, and fire, the warming chakras. You're going to bring them together, red, orange, yellow. You're going to look at this burning bright in your life of all of them. How are you grounded? How are you flowing? How are you burning bright? Tribe, partnership, ego. And ego I'm not referring to here in a negative sense. It's just your identity, who you are as a single individual. And then in the partnership within flow, and then in the tribe within the root. So here are some things to digest and reflect on if you'd like some ideas. And I know Barbie and some of Tammy, you like to journal. So here are some questions that might serve you in the way of your journaling and reflection. What did I learn about how I get and give energy, right? We did that energy inventory activity. You can do it again and see if things have changed. I usually like for people to do that on a monthly basis. How confident did I find myself this month? Were there certain instances that you felt more confident than in others? How has my relationship with my digestion changed? How has your relationship with your gut been altered through this experience? Because I know it has. I know it has. Even if you were only tangentially paying attention to posts, you are still collected within this energy. We are a collective. So all of us, our energies are collected into this space. And whether or not we are active in a lot of these initiatives, you are still feeling it in some way. So it might be small, it might be big. Do I feel like I'm digesting life better? And what does that look like for you? Is my mealtime experience less congested? Some of you, when we were checking in on digestion, had mentioned that you're not chewing enough, that you're not chewing enough in the mouth in order to have better digestion down below, where we spent our time with the fire. So reflecting on chewing, reflecting on your mealtime experience, what type of rituals do you have to slow you down? What type of rituals do you have in your life experience to slow you down as well? It's all connected. So you might want to retake not just the whole detox spectrum quiz, which is online, so it's very easy for you to do. I mentioned redoing the energy inventory. I think that that's a really good idea. Get clear on where you're leaking energy and where you're getting energy and make appropriate shifts among them. You may also want to retake your Stress 360 questionnaire to find out whether or not your stress level has gone down. I did that some months ago, where I think I had 122 was my score, which is considered to be pretty moderately stressed. And then I was aware of what my stressors were. And then when I came back and redid it, it wasn't as high. I had modified some things, but if I didn't have that initial awareness, like, oh wow, sitting in my chair for long periods of time is considered a stressor. Probably we know that, but it's good to have these things top of mind. And if you want additional journaling activities, if you're really going deep into journaling, what I would say here, where did you grow in your fire? And what were challenges? And through those challenges, did you do the growing? And so, with fire, we have that phrase that circulates within society, trial by fire, walking on the coals. So fire challenges us. Fire gets us heated up and expends us and causes reactions. And so I'm sure that things came up for you this month with respect to challenges. Why don't you reflect, even pause this recording at this point, reflect on those challenges, make a list of where your fire showed up. Markel was talking about some of that in our webinar where she spoke out about something at her church with another person there. And, her fire was really burning and she learned through that whole process. So what is it for you? What are some challenges and how did you grow? And if you decide, if you are working with a partner, what I would say, take turns discussing any of this information, including each of the 3 weeks that preceded the last one. And in that way, you complete your fire, you complete this. I always think it's important to have a sense of completion and closure. Not to say that you're putting the lid on any of these chakras. They're always within you and alive and active, but the experience that we have cultivated as a collective needs to come to some form of completion so that we can move on to the next system, which is the love or the heart chakra. So I think it's important to have a sense of rounding out, spend this last week with the fire as your ultimate synthesis, and then the week after this ends, spend that time with your root, flow, and fire combined. Give yourself the luxury, the reflection time. You're not going to have a lecture that week, so you can just sink in to root, flow, and fire and really get into that space. You're not often going to have this time in your life where it's carved out for you in this way. You're being guided and shepherded through the process. So really take that energy, that sacred space to work on those lower chakras, which in many cases can be very challenging because they are so connected to the physical world. And there we are. The little graphic that I chose to show this connection of fire going from big bits into little bits. All right, everybody, thank you so much for being part of the Fire Month. It's been exciting, and I hope that it hasn't been a burden, a burning burden. What I wanted the fire to be presented as this time is a source of joy, a source of brightness and brilliance and radiance and empowerment, and all of those things I've talked about before, yet I wanted a softer feel. Instead of blaring yellows, I chose pale yellows and graphics in order to have softness that would come through the fire, because the fire is soft as well as laser-like. And it is a construction and a builder, those bold, bright, yellow construction signs as much as, and I even think of a yellow light of yields, but it's also the warm glow of a sunset as it starts to sink into the sky, right? The softness of yellow, field flowers being a soft yellow. So what I would really like for you and hope for you at the close of our fire time together is for you to really be balanced with the balance of fire. So see how that goes. And whatever happens is the only thing that could have happened. Enjoy.